Welcome back F11 members to the Fundamentals of Post-Production video tutorials for issue 91, August 2019. So here we have a picture of the lunar eclipse shot just last week over Corfe Castle. A wonderful evening, and hopefully you'll have watched the video blog on that particular shoot, which was entertaining to make, hopefully entertaining to watch. Let's work through the post-production on this picture, which again is pretty simple actually. Should always be simple in my opinion. And but again, it's another opportunity, as we did in part one of this of these tutorials, to have a look at the new texture adjustment tool that is now in Lightroom Classic. Okay, so this is the picture. I'm very pleased with it, and here you'll see the before and after. Not a huge amount of difference, I think you'll agree. Obviously I've recovered some of the tones, the highlights and the shadows, but not a lot done to this picture. Let's just go back into library mode here. I hit tab to get my panels on the side back again and go back into library mode. When I was shooting this picture, I thought what I may be able to do to handle the contrast would be to exposure merge. And as you can see, I've exposed here from really dark to handle the brightest tones in the moon to really quite bright to record here as much tones as I can in the stonework of the castle. When I came to try and exposure merging that using Lightroom's merge to HDR, you can see the effect here. It seems to work quite well, but if you look closely, you can see that the movement of the moon between the individual frames I made caused some problems. There's not a perfect merge here in the cloud, and if I zoom in on the image, you can see here there's all sorts of nastiness going on here in the image, and there's a definite edge there. Can you see that? I don't know quite why, but Lightroom struggles to merge that properly because I'm assuming because of the movement of the moon between the individual frames. So exposure merging did not work, and I experimented with doing it manually, but it just looked horrible. So if in doubt, keep it simple. I came back to this image and let's work through the processing of it now. So I'm just going to look at it full screen there, and if I come back on my history now, you can see there, this is how the image came into the picture. Looking at the histogram here, I've got some clipping highlights there in the brightest part of the moon, and just a few clipping shadows as well. High contrast scene, but I want to maintain, crucially, I want to maintain a believable look to this picture. So really, all I'm going to do in post-production is try and pull back some of that shadow and highlight information. Normally I would start by adjusting white and black points, but there's no point in doing that because both are clipping. So let's just start by seeing what I can pull back on my highlights. And if I come back to around about -50 on my highlights there, it's retrieved some of those tones in that bright moon. Now if I tried to put some detail into the brightest part of the moon, it would just look completely unrealistic. So okay, I've pulled back some of those highlights. It's indicating that I'm no longer clipping there, but if I go too far, you can see what happens. It starts adding in some fake tone there, just a mid-tone grey really, which just doesn't look realistic at all. So there's a limit to what can be achieved. So around about -54 there, 55 is, I think, about right. And I'm going to do the same with my shadows, see what I can retrieve from the shadows here. Now if I come right up, it starts looking a bit unrealistic there. Again, I'm going to pull it back to around about plus 60 there, plus 67. And I think that looks realistic. And we've got some nice detail now in the castle. So that's about it. There is nothing more I really want to do to this picture. I don't want to start playing with vibrance or saturation. But one thing I'm going to experiment with is this new texture control we've got here in the Presence tab. We looked at it in part 1. So again, if I zoom in on the picture, and let's just take it to an area of, we've got both stone and sky here, okay? Now if I start putting a bit of enhancing the texture, if I go all the way, can you see what it's doing? It's actually picking up the noise in the image. Now this was shot at quite a high ISO anyways in the first place. I've forgotten how high in ISO. Let's have a look. It'll be down here in the data. ISO 3200. Okay, so there's noise in the picture already, although not too much to detract from the picture. But I do not want to be accentuating that noise, and clearly one byproduct of the texture adjustment slider is that it does tend to accentuate noise. So in the area of the sky, I don't want to do that at all. But in the stonework here, I think a bit of texture there does just bring out some of that detail in the stonework there. Again, keep things subtle. So what I'm going to do is, again, rather than adjust globally the picture, the whole of the image, come back to fit, I'm going to just use the adjustment brush here to just select the area that I want to apply my texture adjustment to. Okay, so I've gone to the adjustment brush here, I've selected show selected mask overlay, and now I start selecting my area. And key is down here to have auto mask selected. Just make sure I've got a slightly smaller brush. It's a bit like mowing the lawn, this actually. The bit that takes the time is the edges. So I'm just going to use a relatively small brush to go around the edge of my selected area. And it's actually picking up the edge as well because I've got auto mask selected. Okay, so let's just select this here. Okay, now I've done that edge there. Let's go around this edge here. Again, the auto mask is working well there. Do the edge. It was such a beautiful evening that I'll not forget that shoot in a hurry. Okay, so there we go. That's almost the edge done. Go around the windows. Here and here. Always bear in mind that the red is only just showing me the area that I'm selecting. It's not actually doing anything yet. Now I can afford to use a bigger brush now and just fill in the bits in the middle. There we go. It'll be interesting to see just how much we use this adjustment texture slider, won't we? It's one of those tools that we'll probably look back on in future years and think, oh, I wish we had that before. But as always, just keep it subtle. Restraint is the key. Okay, come down on my adjustment size there. Okay, so I've selected the area, select off on my mask overlay, and now I can just go zoom in again. And now I'm going to determine how much texture I want to apply. Just move my window over the stonework here. What do you think? I reckon somewhere around plus 35 looks right to me. Again, I don't want to go too far. I don't want to start boosting the noise unnecessarily. Plus just over 30. Looks good to me. Come back out. And let's look at the before and after. Click on Done to apply that. And now look at the before and after. And I'm finished. So there you go. That's it for this month. We'd love to hear from you. See you next month.